The following story is a translated and adapted conversation, recounting supernatural experiences from around the world. This content is intended for entertainment purposes only. Listen with an open mind and enjoy the thrill of the unknown. The content in this video is purely for entertainment. Viewer discretion is advised. If you are easily frightened, be prepared some stories might just send chills down your spine. If you're ready, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and immerse yourself in the world of the unexplained.
In the summer of 1988, Fort Frederick State Park, nestled in the rolling hills of western Maryland, was a living monument to the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763. Its weathered stone walls, the only original fort of its kind in the United States, stood as a silent witness to the brutal conflicts between British, French, and Native American forces along the Potomac River. The fort's fields and woods, once bloodied by skirmishes, now hosted living history reenactments, where volunteers donned colonial uniforms to recreate the era's battles and camp life. Into this historic crucible stepped Emily Carver, a 25-year-old history graduate student and volunteer reenactor, drawn to Fort Frederick's past like a moth to a flame. Emily's involvement wasn't just academic passion. Raised in Hagerstown, she'd grown up on stories of the fort's role in the war tales of soldiers ambushed in the woods, settlers massacred, and spectral figures seen in the fog. Her grandfather, a local historian, had filled her childhood with accounts of Fort Frederick's ghosts, claiming the dead never left the fields where they fell. Now, pursuing a master's degree in colonial history at the University of Maryland, Emily volunteered at the park to immerse herself in the era, hoping to uncover truths for her thesis on frontier warfare. When the reenactment group planned a nighttime training exerciser tactical war game in the fort's surrounding fields, and Woodshay eagerly joined, unaware of the spectral forces tied to the land. The journey to Fort Frederick was a step into the past. Emily drove from College Park, her beat-up Volvo winding through Maryland's countryside, the July air thick with humidity and the scent of pine. The park greeted her with its timeless beauty, golden fields, dense woods, the Potomac River glinting in the distance. The fort's stone walls loomed, their grey bulk imposing yet weathered, scarred by time and war. The reenactment camp buzzed with activity volunteers in woolen coats, tricorn hats and moccasins, their flintlock muskets gleaming under the sun. Emily's role was to assist with living history demonstrations, portraying a camp follower, woman who cooked, sewed, and supported the troops. Her real passion, though, was the research, interviewing reenactors, studying artifacts, and exploring the fort's grounds for her thesis, the nighttime war game, proposed by the group's leader. Tom Brennan was a fun departure, a mock battle to practice 18th century tactics in the dark, moving stealthily through the fields and woods. Emily saw it as a chance to experience the soldier's world, to feel the tension of a nighttime raid. Armed with a lantern, a notebook, and her reenactor's kit, she arrived at the fort. Ignoring her grandfather's old warning, the dead walk at Frederick when the sun goes down. The day was a flurry of activity. Emily helped set up the camp, hauling water, mending costumes, and chatting with fellow reenactors. The group was eclectic. Tom, a grizzled history teacher with a booming laugh. Sarah, a quiet nurse who loved the era's music. And Jake, a cocky college freshman obsessed with muskets. They drilled under the sun, practicing formations and mock skirmishes, their shouts echoing off the fort's walls. Emily's notebook filled with observations, the weight of a flintlock, the chafe of wool in summer, the camaraderie of camp life details to enrich her thesis. As dusk fell, Tom gathered the group to explain the war game. They'd split into two teams, moving through the fields and woods to capture a flag near the Potomac, using lanterns and stealth to mimic colonial tactics. The rules were strict: no live ammo, no horseplay, stick to the marked paths. Emily felt a thrill, her historian's mind imagining soldiers creeping through these same fields 230 years ago. But the woods loomed, their shadows deepening, and she recalled her grandfather's tales of ghostly patrols seen near the river. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the game, but a quiet unease settled in her chest. That evening, the group shared a meal by the campfire, the fort's walls casting long shadows. Sarah sang a haunting ballad, her voice mingling with the crickets' hum. Jake boasted about his marksmanship, while Tom recounted Fort Frederick's history, its role as a British outpost. Its sieges, the soldiers buried in unmarked graves. Some say they're still here. He said, half joking, patrolling the fields. The group laughed, but Emily's unease grew, her eyes darting to the darkening woods. The air felt heavier, the Potomac's murmur carrying a faint, unnatural chill. The war game began at 10 p.m., the fort's fields bathed in moonlight, the woods a wall of black. Emily's team, her, Sarah, and 6 others wore dark cloaks over their uniforms, their lanterns dimmed to avoid detection. Tom's team vanished into the woods, their laughter fading, leaving Emily's group to navigate the open field toward the river. The air was cool, damp with river mist, the scent of grass and earth mingling with the tang of gunpowder from earlier drills. Her boots sank into the soft ground, each step amplifying her senses, the rustle of leaves, the hoot of an owl, the distant rush of the Potomac. Emily's lantern cast a weak glow, its light swallowed by the darkness. The field was vast, its edges blurred by mist, the fort's silhouette fading behind them. She felt exposed, the historian's thrill giving way to a primal unease. Sarah walked beside her, clutching her lantern, her face pale in the moonlight. "This feels wrong," she whispered, her usual calm fraying. Emily nodded, her notebook tucked away, her hand gripping the lantern's handle. The other reenactors, mostly young men, joked quietly, but their voices were strained, their eyes scanning the shadows. As they neared the woods, the air grew colder, the mist thicker, curling round the grass like fingers. Emily's lantern flickered, its flame dimming, and the silence deepened, the night's sounds crickets, river muffled, as if the field was holding its breath. Then she heard it, a faint, rhythmic tread, like boots marching, coming from the far side of the field. Her heart quickened, thinking it was Tom's team, but the sound was wrong to steady, too heavy, like a disciplined patrol. She raised her lantern, its beam catching nothing but mist and grass. Emily signaled her team to stop, their lanterns clustering, their breaths visible in the chill. The marching grew clearer, now accompanied by a low, metallic clink flintlocks, bayonets, or buckles. Across the field, near the tree line, figures emerged from the mist, tall, shadowy shapes, moving in a tight formation, heading away from the fort toward the Potomac. They wore colonial uniforms, tread coats, tricorn hats, breeches, their flintlock muskets slung over their shoulders, their steps eerily synchronized. Their forms were faint, translucent, their edges fraying like smoke, their faces blurred, as if erased by time. Emily's breath caught, her lantern trembling, its light barely reaching the figures. There were 6 or 7, their silhouettes stark against the mist, their movements deliberate, like soldiers on a mission. No one in her team could identify them. Tom's group was in the woods, and no other reenactors were scheduled. Sarah gasped, her lantern dropping, its flames snuffing out. "They're not ours," she whispered, her voice shaking. The other reenactors froze, their jokes silenced, their faces pale. One, a burly mechanic named Greg, swore under his breath, his hand clutching a mock bayonet. The figures didn't acknowledge them, their march unwavering, but their presence was a weight, crushing Emily's chest. A low, guttural moan rose from them, not from mouths, but from the air itself. A sound of exhaustion and despair that vibrated through the ground. The mist swirled, forming faint shapes hands, is around the figures, their forms flickering like a dying flame. Emily's mind raced with her grandfather's stories, soldiers ambushed near the Potomac, their bodies left in the mud, their spirits doomed to patrol. The moan grew louder, a dirge-like chant in English, French, and unfamiliar tongues. To the river, to the river. Emily's team backed away, their lanterns trembling, the air plunging to freezing, their breaths fogging. Her lantern flickered, its flame nearly gone, and the field darkened, the figures' forms the only light, a sickly glow that burned her eyes. The marching stopped, and the figures paused, their blurred faces turning, as if sensing the living. Emily felt a jolt, as if her soul was being peeled open her guilt for romanticizing the war. Her failure to grasp its cost, her own safety while the dead lingered. The chant became a wail, a deafening storm of voices accusing her. You forgot us. Emily's legs trembled, her lantern falling, its flame dead. The figures glided closer, their forms towering, their flintlocks glinting with an unnatural sheen, their blurred faces pulsing with voids where eyes should be. Cold, skeletal hands translucent, dripping with river mud reached from the mist, grazing her arms, their touch burning like ice. The ground trembled, the grass sinking, as if opening to swallow her. Her mind flooded with visions, soldiers bayoneted in the woods, settlers scalped, the Potomac red with blood. The visions weren't hers, but they felt real, as if the field was forcing her to see its pain. The wail became a scream, a cacophony of voices British-French, native demanding, "Join us." The figures advanced, their steps silent but heavy, the mist curling around them like a shroud. Emily's scream caught in her throat, her body paralyzed by a terror she'd never known, not in her studies, not in her reenactments, not anywhere. Sarah sobbed, clutching Emily's arm, her nurse's calm shattered. Greg swung his mock bayonet, his bravado gone, his voice raw, "Stay back." The other reenactors scattered, their lanterns dropping, their shouts swallowed by the wail. Tom's voice broke the spell, distant but sharp from the woods. "Emily, fall back." His team's lanterns flickered, their forms emerging, oblivious to the figures. The distraction jolted Emily, and she stumbled back, grabbing Sarah, her boots slipping in the mud. The figures paused, their voids locking on her, then resumed their march, gliding toward the Potomac, their wail fading but lingering in her ears. The mist thickened, swallowing them, and the field stilled, the silence worse heavy, alive, watching. Dawn broke over Fort Frederick, pale and misty, the fields silent but charged with unease. Emily's team huddled in the fort's barracks, their hands shaking, their eyes avoiding hers. Sarah was silent, her face ashen, muttering about quitting, reenacting. Greg chain-smoked, his bravado replaced by fear, insisting the figures weren't human. The others whispered among themselves, some praying, others denying what they'd seen. Tom, skeptical but shaken, demanded explanations stray reenactors. Locals playing pranks, but no one had been scheduled, and the park was locked at night. The fort's ranger, an old man named Clarence, nodded grimly when told, muttering about the patrol scene since the war. Emily's notebook lay untouched, her historian's curiosity shattered. She searched the field at first light, her boots crunching on dew-soaked grass, looking for tracks, dropped items, anything to explain the figures. The ground was unmarked, the mist gone, but the air felt heavy, as if the fort was watching. She traced the figure's path to the Potomac, finding nothing, no footprints, no flintlock casings, only the river's endless murmur. The absence of evidence was worse, fueling her fear that the figures weren't bound by the physical world. Emily left Fort Frederick that day, unable to stay another night. Tom drove her to Hagerstown, the fort's walls fading in the rearview mirror, their stone a silent accusation. The Potomac glinted, and she heard the wail one last time, faint but clear, coming from the river. She didn't look back, afraid of what she'd see. In College Park, she tried to resume her studies, but Fort Frederick clung to her, a shadow that darkened her days. She couldn't sleep without hearing the wail, couldn't walk near fields without feeling those cold hands. Her dreams were haunted by the figures, their voids staring, their chant echoing to the river. Emily abandoned her thesis, her passion for colonial history tainted by dread. She quit reenacting, her muskets and uniforms stored away, fearing they'd summon the figures. Her grandfather's stories, once charming, now terrified her, their truth too real. Sometimes, at night, she heard marching steady, heavy, with a metallic clink coming from her apartment's corners. She never looked afraid of what she'd see, but the figures' voids lingered in her mind, a stain that wouldn't fade. A year later, Sarah sent Emily a Polaroid from a reenactment, the fort's field in the background. In one corner, faint, blurry shapes, stood soldiers, their uniforms colonial, their faces voids, marching toward the river. The photo was streaked with grey, as if mist had seeped through the paper. Emily burned it, her hands trembling, but the patrol lingered, a reminder that some fields never let go.